critical time right now. While many initiatives are being implemented to tackle climate change, much of the work still remains to meet even the most modest goal of the Paris Agreements. So how do we accelerate this transition to a more sustainable future that will protect our Mother Earth? You probably recycle your rubbish, you might only take the bus or ride a bike to get around, and maybe you've even gone vegan recently. That's all worthwhile and very important, but ironically, while you're ordering that Oatly cappuccino, your pension saving, the funds that you've set aside to invest in your future, are actually being invested in fossil fuels. If you're going green, why shouldn't your money do so as well?
How your capital is invested is one of the key ways that we can fight climate change. In fact, if you move your pension savings to sustainable funds, it's actually a much more impactful way of cutting your personal carbon footprint than eating less meat, buying an electric car, or even never taking the plane again. Today, we're going to focus on this impactful approach: how to green your pension, how to redirect funds towards businesses that are crucial in shaping a healthier future for you and future generations. Our first guest is Anders Langworth, Head of Sustainability at Nordea. First of all, welcome, Anders.
Thank you. Very glad to be here.
So, for the planet to survive, we all wonder how we're going to keep the rising global average temperatures to below 1.5 degrees. Some would argue it all depends on money, or rather the shift of capital. From a bank's point of view, what happens to our money when we're not looking, and how can you as a bank help us make a difference with our money?
Very good question. And I would start with, the financial sector as such has a key role in the entire transition towards a more sustainable world, since we sit on the capital. If we take Nordea, for instance, and look at the asset under management and combine that with the lending portfolios, we have 700 or more than 700 billion euros. And that is one bank. So imagine that's a big bucket of money that really can drive change if we shift it towards more sustainable alternatives. And that more in practice is exactly what we can and will do even more moving forward. For instance, if you're a private customer, funds, green mortgages, that's here and now, and also on the corporate side, you can take a green loan, also here and now. If we look a little bit ahead, a further perspective on how we can enable sustainable choices and transition is also, if you can't have a green loan today, if you're a company customer, then you might want to transition into a more green practice or more sustainable practice. And then we want to be able to be there for them and support that transition with financing products, so kind of transition loans, transition bonds, etc. And by doing that, then we are starting to shift capitals both from private persons and also from corporates into sustainable solutions. So that's one, the direct perspective, I would say. Then the more indirect and kind of long-term perspective is setting global policies and frameworks. For 2 years ago, we launched something called the Principles for Responsible Banking. And that is banks across the entire world. We are now more than 230 signatories representing, I think it's 1.7 billion customers. And it's a very big chunk of money. I think we're talking 55 trillion US dollars in assets. And all of these banks goes together and set targets and also make sure to report on the progress of the targets, on how we drive towards the Paris Climate Agreement and also the UN Sustainable Development Goals. So that is kind of long-term with the frameworks and target setting, and direct with actually the products that we offer the customers.
So there's been a lot of buzz lately about a green capital shift happening. According to a global study, 77% of people would not invest against their personal beliefs. So this is what people say, but what can we actually see? Is there a green shift, and what are the driving forces behind this shift?
Yes, it is absolutely a green shift that we see now. And I would say primarily if we start with a customer perspective, customers, I mean, they are very engaged and they are very interested. What we have seen during the last couple of years is then when we start to integrate and ask the customers about sustainability in the savings advisory, and also put big efforts into training our advisors, then more and more people always want to choose the more sustainable alternatives. So I would say, yes, that kind of survey is very much correct, as long as we as a bank take the responsibility and tell the customers about what kind of choices they can make, and then enable it to be very easy for them to also make these choices. Then we're off to a very good start. But then also, it's more arrows pointing in the right direction. It's the customer perspective, but it's also the owner, investor perspective, employee perspective, and also perspective that the regulators are forcing this. So kind of, again, all and many arrows are pointing in the right direction. And I think that is why it's a very clear yes on the green shift.
Great. So it seems like it's pointing towards yes, but what do you consider to be the biggest obstacles in accelerating this green capital shift? And at the same time, what are the must-win battles in the short term?
Yes, we have a big challenge ahead, absolutely. So there are a few obstacles. I would say one is, if we take today on the product side, for instance, on corporate or business banking customers, there are not that many that today is eligible for a green loan or a green bond. So what we need to be innovative here is to make sure, as I mentioned earlier, on the transitional products, so we can make sure that customers that look ahead and set plans on how to be more sustainable, that we can be there for them. That is one key where we really need to make sure that we have a broader offering to push the long-term direction. Another big challenge is data. We need more climate data, we need more data on social issues, so we can be more specific and quantify targets, and also the progress and kind of reporting on the targets, and be more and more precise and specific, so we ensure that we actually do the right things, but also that we have the right speed in the things that we do. So those are two main obstacles. And then a third might not be an obstacle, but kind of a little warning flag, as we talk a lot about climate and green as of today. There will also be a lot of social effects of the green shift. And if we go too fast, then we will have social issues as a problem further on. I mean, let's say that we transition sectors and industries so fast that the employment rate can't keep up, then you will see a lot of unemployment. And the effect from a lot of unemployment will be increased inequalities. And the effect from that will be more polarization. And then we are setting negative forces in motion. So also warning flag, we are talking about green and climate, but we need also to think about the social effects of this big transition, because it will be big and it will be dramatic.
Right, and maybe finally, a last question. If you could shift the money in a specific direction, what would be that direction?
And now you and probably the audience thinks that I would say climate or a certain sector, but I won't. I would say I want to put money in the direction of long-term thinking. If we are always kind of thinking of stability, long-term value creation, then we will take the proper business decisions today to steer towards society's goals. So again, focus on long-term resilience, value creation. That would be the best way to make sure that we actually reach society's goals. That's on a kind of global macro level. If we take a more smaller perspective here and now, I would also, of course, like to see money to go in the direction of fantastic impact startups, as we have here at Norrsken, and probably more than just Norrsken impact companies in the audience today. So we need both perspectives, the big macro global capital shift, but again, also make sure that we support all these fantastic startup companies.
Well, thank you so much for all these valuable insights, and good luck with all these exciting challenges ahead.
Thank you.
How huge is the energy transition challenge? Here are some facts that provide an insight into the scale of our challenge. Number one, of all energy used in the world today, 82% still comes from natural gas, coal, and oil. Number two, at the same time, energy demand will increase by 50% in 2050. And number three, today it's difficult to attract affordable capital for energy projects in the developing economies. It's an honor to be here shedding light on a matter of critical importance on the journey towards a sustainable society and a clean energy future. The challenge of a global shift towards clean energy is immense. And so what is at stake? Unless we manage to make extensive progress in the energy transition and achieve a sustainable method of supplying affordable power around the world, we will be left to face the frightening consequences of irreversible climate change. To reach our shared global 1.5 degree target, every opportunity we have to support the transition towards clean energy must be taken. And driving a capital shift is one of those important opportunities that we must collectively take, as it is only through ensuring that investments are made where the positive impact is the highest that we will be able to reach our ambitions. Through brave leadership and targeted investment strategies, we can ensure that we are able to move forward as a global community, leaving no nations behind. Energy lies at the heart of both the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and the Paris Agreement on Climate Change. According to the United Nations, ensuring access to affordable, reliable, and sustainable energy for all will open a new world of opportunities for billions of people around the globe, but especially in the developing world. An excellent example of a project which is making the difference is the Png Biomass project in Papua New Guinea. The Png Biomass project is the first proposed utility-scale renewable biomass and solar power generation project in PNG. It will be a cost-effective, independent power producer that is economically, socially, and environmentally sustainable. Png Biomass will substantially enhance PNG's reputation in demonstrating climate action and help the country transition to fully renewable energy sector. The project is also unique for another reason. It relies on the active participation of landowners and communities. At the core of the project is the objective to power PNG with affordable, domestic, low-emission renewable energy through an inclusive economic growth model that empowers those local communities. When we look at accelerating the transition to clean energy, every opportunity must be taken. Reducing reliance on fossil fuels and leveraging clean energy in order to shift to a long-term sustainable result. At AFRY, we see energy deriving from zero-emission sources, as well as energy saved through efficiency measures, bioenergy, carbon removal and storage, technologies as key elements necessary to make progress on the path towards a long-term sustainable result. We as a society already do have the knowledge and technologies to allow full decarbonization. Yet, we have to accelerate progress. And for this collective action is needed. The current pace is simply not enough. And so I urge everybody to use all means available to them to push in the right direction. Shifting capital to enable sustainable energy projects become a reality is exactly what is required, especially in the developing world, where the transition challenge is the greatest. With collective action, we can reach our targets and move beyond them to create a sustainable, livable future for generations to come.
Let's talk about pension savings. With me here on stage, I have Johan Nystedt, CEO, Nordea Life and Pension, and your dear colleague, Cecilia Kellner, Portfolio Manager and Sustainable Strategist. Welcome to this session.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, Johan, I will begin asking you a very important question. Out of many reasons, the pension capital is a very important topic, right? So, not at least when it comes to the possibility to steer towards a sustainable development. What is your view on this?
Yes, I think this is a really important question. To transition into a better world, into a more sustainable world, a lot of investments are needed. Pension capital can be a really, really important lever into this because it's invested long term, it's invested by relatively few decision makers, and it's a huge pool of money. According to the Swedish Pension Agency, almost 7,000 billion Swedish crowns are invested in pension capital. And that was the end of 2019. So it's a huge pool of money that we can count on here for the future.
So we really need to shift that focus into a greener future, of course. And Cecilia, for quite some time now, there has been an ongoing discussion about the transition to a sustainable future by using these green investments and green savings. Is this just the talk, or can we see a change also in people's behavior as well? Can we see this green shift that we all speak about?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, what we have in Nordea since, I would say, a year ago in our, where when you meet your advisor in the bank and discuss your investments, there now since over 12 months ago, we've added a question which is mandatory, meaning that you have to ask the client and the customer, would you like your investments to be with a sustainable approach? Would you like your investments to have a sustainable integration? And you're asked to answer yes or no. And then based on your answer, you proceed, and then the investment universe is sort of adapted to that. And when we started, I would say it was around 10% that said yes to the question, and now we're up in 50%. That's not good enough. I mean, we would like it to be 100%, and we would like to just offer sustainable investments. But so I would say that shift has absolutely taken place. So for life and pension, for example, when we discuss pension savings and the capital that we manage on behalf of the customer, there is no question. And that's basically because we have decided within the life company that the money that we manage are invested in a sustainable way. So it's a high level of sustainability integrated into all of our investments that we make the decision. And then you can ask yourself, why? Why do we do that? And basically there are, I would say, three main reasons why we've chosen that path. And one is it's long-term investments. It's roughly, I would say, depends on your age, but 30 plus years that we basically are in control of the capital. And we have a responsibility. Johan mentioned the large pool of capital that needs to be allocated towards sustainable investments. And thirdly, it's we absolutely believe it will give you a better return. So by investing with the sustainable integration, we believe that your pensions will be handled in a profitable and good way. So it's not philanthropy by any case. It's profitable.
It's profitable and good business, and the green shift has already started. Hopefully that will continue. And I think it's so interesting about the psychological mechanism which makes us really what affects these decisions from us as consumers as well. And we will discuss that later here on stage. But Cecilia, I think this is very important and very interesting. So could you please tell us how you work and engage the managed pension capital within Nordea? You're speaking about this shift, and maybe you can give us some concrete examples?
Yeah, I mean, we have a possibility to be able to invest in all different kinds of asset classes. So we're not only restricted to only invest in listed equities or funds. So we can basically invest in a large pool of assets. Mm-hmm. And we have started to invest more with a focus on impact investments, more into focus on sustainable business models, new technology. We are planning to increase that part of our assets to be more focused on impact. We can do much more there. And that's also where we came across Norrsken, because they have a venture capital fund. Mm. And they're experts in finding these the companies that will actually help solve problems. So that is one thing, and we've also invested in Northvolt. So we would like to be in the forefront and also to use the capital for these types of investments, and they should hopefully also be good return on those ones. So that is something that we actually do, and then what we can be a lot better on in terms of engaging the clients. We need to be more transparent. I think we need to educate the clients and the customers on the importance of pension savings, but also what they can do and what it does for your portfolio, both in terms of profitability, but also that you're doing something good and it will also give you a better return. So there are a lot of things we can improve.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, just considering myself, I just feel I agree completely. It's not like I have 100% information about my pensions, etc., and how I should allocate it, because it's not something historically which we've been educated into as, consumers or workers or whatever we're saving into. So I think that's very, very important. But Johan, we're in a hurry, right? Yes. It's a hurry, and the scientists, it seems like they all say that this is a very serious situation we have in the future, and we speak about it all the time, but not so much about the pension savings as I think we should. So how can we get people to take more actions regarding the existing pension capital to start saving more in a sustainable way? I mean, it's not only for there and for other futures, so it should be a quite relevant question, right, for all of us.
Yes, it's a very relevant question, and we are in a big hurry. And the good part with this is that you can actually make a difference, because you can make a choice. You can make a sustainable choice, an active choice for your pension, and then secure, or not secure the future, but at least contribute to the future and making it more sustainable. And the good part with this is that if you're making the choice, and many are making the choice, then the pension companies will react. They will react and they will adopt. They will develop more sustainable products. They will shift their own assets that they have and manage to more sustainable assets. So we will get a snowball rolling, a commercial snowball rolling for sustainability purposes. And I think this is the key, really, to get this to become more commercial, to talk about it commercially. Then the development will go by itself.
So let's get the ball rolling. And thank you so much, Cecilia and Johan, for hosting this session today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Here's a simple step-by-step approach of how you can already take action. Step 1, identify your core values. What is important for you as an individual or business leader? Where do you want to see change happen? Write it out. Step 2, look through your current investments. Where is your money currently going? If it's a fund that invests in listed companies, take a look at their corporate sustainability report. It should be available on their website. Read through the reports critically. Does the strategy make sense to you? Does the company value the same things as you? Step 3, go online or visit your bank and make a shift. Change the allocation of your current pension plan towards more sustainable funds. Speak with your pension plan provider about alternative fund options or new funds that might be available in the future. Oh, and don't stop there. Speak up and put pressure on the financial industry. Email, talk to your banks, your company, pension funds, and financial advisors. Let them know there is a demand for sustainable investment products. And get your friends and family on board. Share articles with them, talk about your beliefs, and get them to take action as well.
We have now listened to a lot of reasons why we should shift the capital towards a more sustainable future. Even though we might understand the reason for this, it can be hard to take action, as individuals or as business leaders. In order for us to understand ourselves better and why it is like this, we have invited Jenny Richardson, a psychologist at 29K. Warm welcome, Jenny, to the stage.
Thank you so much, Eric.
So happy to have you here. We just had a discussion about this topic, about the psychological mechanisms, which I feel very interested into digging into. But tell me, Jenny, why is it so hard for us people to actually take action? Even though we know it's so important for us to go green and to make better choices?
Well, sometimes smarter psychologists than me said that information is to behavioral change is like spaghetti is to a brick wall. It's pretty useless with information. It doesn't make us act, it doesn't make us change behavior, because we need a much more wider contextual understanding of behavior than just to educate people, because that doesn't make people take action. And pensions, it's also, it's far away in time before I retire, and that makes people very reluctant to take decisions that we don't know what's going to happen in in 10, 20 or 30 years. So it's easier to do nothing. And it's also important to understand that behavior is affected by both the situation that we are in, and then there's a behavior, and then there's a consequence of that behavior. And often when we talk about behavioral change, we forget the consequences are much more important for behaviors than the situations are. So we need to create situations where it's easy to make the right decisions, and then we need to make consequences to make those behaviors reinforced and appear again and again. And this is really hard when it comes to pension, because it's hard for us to have any consequences at all in the moment.
Mm-hmm. But why is it so hard for us to think so long term? I mean, you're a psychologist. Is it something with our brains that can't function into thinking ahead? I mean, I can speak for myself. It's not an easy choice, and we're not educated enough today. So what is it about our psychological mechanism which makes this so hard for us?
Well, we are extremely hardwired to do stuff that is reinforced in the short term. It's much easier to hang out on the couch and eat candy than go to the gym. And the gym might be just an hour away, and pensions are like 40 years away, or 30 or 20. So if it's hard for us to take action with, when the long-term consequence is 1 or 2 hours away, it's even harder when it's much further away in time. And then it's also, the short-term consequences are so much more powerful and rewarding than a possible long-term consequence. So we humans, we have evolved during centuries and to make decisions in the short term, because that has been much smarter for us. We are hungry, we fix the food. It rains, we fix shelter. To think what's going to happen in 5 years, it's a recent development for human beings to be able to plan and fantasize and do that. So these kind of fantasies or imaginations that we are able to do, they are not as powerful as the immediate consequences of doing something here and now. So yes, we have our biology kind of against us when trying to make these kinds of decisions.
But how can we fight biology then? I mean, what tools can we actually use to try to change this pattern and to start thinking about the future, not only for ourselves, but for the world? I mean, we heard before, it's not about money. I mean, it can be profitable. Do we need to educate? What tools can we use to change this?
Well, we can use, a bunch of different mechanisms to make us behave differently. And that is, we do what other people do. So if many other people do these kinds of behavioral changes, we follow them. So if we see others do something, we're more likely to do it. If we get positive consequences of doing something here and now, we are much more likely to do it. So if we can bring a value or if we can see the value of doing something here and now for the future, then we can sort of bring that value into the moment, and we can feel that we are doing good or doing right or being doing something for our grandchildren or stuff like that. If we get that feeling into the room when you make a decision about your pensions, then you're much more likely to make a decision in that direction. So we need to bring the value, the long-term value, into the short-term consequence. And we also need to trigger this behavior. So in a situation where you are supposed to like make choices for your pension, you need to have some sort of trigger, and that trigger needs to be both emotional and cognitive in order for it to work, because if you don't use both, it's kind of useless again. So that's some of the things that we can at least help ourselves with doing.
But I just have to ask you, I mean, you've been thinking a lot about this, you've been working with it for a long time. So have you seen this shift, as we've been speaking about during these sessions today, have you seen it started to happen with these patterns that you're just speaking? Are you seeing these differences in people's mentality towards a greener future?
I think we could see a shift in people's behavior, that the value of taking care of our planet is more vivid today than it was just a few years ago. So that value is more common, and then we use that value to make decisions here and now for a better future. So that is definitely a shift that has come the last 3 or 4 years maybe. And we also see that young people are much more engaged in their future than older people, which has sort of obvious reasons, because they have to live with the decisions that they make. Yeah, and we who are older don't have to live with those decisions anymore. And we can also see that companies are more interested in being socially responsible and stuff like that, and that it's harder, I believe, I've heard, to get investments if you don't think in a sustainable way. So that's a really important aspect that has happened the last few years, I would say.
So the shift is coming, hopefully, and thank you so much, Annie, for actually being here on this session today.
Now handing it over to Maria Mal, partner at Arabesque, who will walk us through some of their data and analyses.
It's been amazing to witness the tremendous growth in demand from retail investors with regards to sustainable investments. And as you mentioned earlier, the majority of millennials want to invest sustainably. And not only do they want to, they actually expect that their financial advisors would do an investment analysis on the basis of the sustainability performance before they make a recommendation. And this is also a new norm that is supported by new regulation about companies having to disclose more on sustainability data, about investment products needs to disclose how sustainable they are, and the EU is actually leading the way. We have developed a tool based on artificial intelligence and big data that we call AFRY, and that are assessing the sustainability performance of a company and how that is linked to their future financial performance. We also have a tool for assessing how a company is contributing to global warming through their emissions that we translated into a temperature score. Here we can see that companies that outperform on sustainability metrics that are financially material to them also outperform financially. And based on our Arabesque AFRY data, you can see that the top 20 companies who perform well on sustainability data metrics that are financially material also outperformed 20 ones that have the poorest performance on sustainability by 3.8% per year. And equally important, the 20 worst performers underperformed the average universe by 1.8% per year. So it's important to keep in mind that you don't necessarily have to give up financial returns by investing sustainability, but you have to make sure that you have the right tools. Over the recent years, the quantity of corporate emissions data has increased significantly, but unfortunately, very few companies still disclose all of their emissions. When we did our assessment, only 15% across the largest indices are not disclosing their emissions data. And this is equal to about $5 trillion in market capitalization. If we look at the Stockholm 30, it's the best performance across all of the indices, with about 50% of companies are on course to meet the 1.5 degree goal by 2050. But at the same time, 11% of the Stockholm 30 are not disclosing emissions data. So there's room for important improvement. So my call to action is use the sustainability data tools available to you and make your own analysis on industries and specific companies. And secondly, put pressure on your money manager and pension funds, not only to say their investment products are sustainable, ask them to be more transparent about the sustainability performance of your savings, and don't be afraid to ask for more information.
In this session, we will discuss how impact and financial return can go hand in hand. I am joined by Tove Rodelius, investment manager at Norrsken VC, and Johan Nystedt, CEO, Liv Pension Nordea. Maybe starting with you, Tove. So, impact and financial return at the same time. How does that work?
Well, traditionally, institutional investors have often seen either kind of financial returns or profits as mutually exclusive. But gradually, some investors have started kind of seeing using negative screening in order to avoid and exclude certain investments into businesses and industries that are not aligned with their morals. For example, alcohol, tobacco, gambling. Some investors have then taken it one step further, and then it's what's called positive screening. So selecting investments based on the best-in-class kind of ESG alternatives. Impact investing is really taking it one step further. So only investing in assets that have, or companies that have the intention and the commitment to create and measure impact. So impact investing is really looking at companies in which you can achieve both financial returns and impact, with a kind of key goal of achieving some sort of ripple effect where we can support entrepreneurs that are trying to solve some of the kind of the world's most pressing challenges, but whilst also generating financial returns, and in that sense influence and increase the capital going into impact investment as an asset class.
Great. So Johan, when we talk about a shift within what is sustainable today compared to before, how would you say this affects pension savings, and what should we think of when we think about investing in our future?
Yes, I think that there has been a big change. Pension capital is a huge pool of money. It's an important pool of money to drive sustainability and use sustainable development. And I think that the pension industry is more and more looking for sustainable assets, more and more. And I think this trend will continue as we also see that sustainable assets are performing better. So I think it's a natural development right now that we see. And then when we also get the consumers aware of what they want to have, and they try to, or they start to want to invest sustainable, then this will become a commercial issue, and the pension companies will invest even more into sustainable assets. So I think this is a big hot question for the moment.
Cool. So Johan mentioned some trends that he's seen from his point of view, but what about you, Tove? What do you see are some of the trends within impact investing and with investors in general?
Yeah, I mean, we are seeing some positive trends. The impact investing industry and the market size grew by 40% last year to $715 billion. But however, that's only, even though it's a good trend, that's less than 1% of the global assets under management. And meanwhile, United Nations, for example, they are stating that roughly $7 trillion of additional capital is required in order to finance the Sustainable Development Goals by 2030. And 7 trillion, that's a whole lot of capital, but it still only represents about 6% of the global assets under management. So it's definitely doable. And I think that's why institutional investments, institutional capital, like pension funds, like Nordea Life and Pension, is so important and can really make a dent in the world and really make a change. And it's encouraging for us to see that, 4 years ago when we raised our first fund, a lot of investors had the hesitation in terms of is financial returns and impact mutually exclusive, or can they be combined? And I think people are waking up to the fact that impact and profits do go hand in hand, not just because you're doing good, but also because it financially makes sense. Because ultimately, you're investing in businesses where they're aligned with macro trends, with political and regulatory tailwinds. They have the ability to really attract key talent, especially as Generation Z and millennials are increasingly looking for responsible companies to work for. They create need to have solutions rather than nice to have solutions. But also, last but not least, like Johan was talking about consumers, what we see is that impact companies, they also manage to attract customers that are willing to spend up to 10% more for sustainable products and services. So we think it makes sense from every angle, really, and it's a trend that it's the future of investing. I mean, I'm slightly biased here, but it's a trend that we really believe is the future, and that we hope is here to stay.
And Johan, so for you as capital owners, you have opportunities to make alternative investments. And I know that you have used this opportunity to invest pension capital in the Norrsken VC fund. Could you tell us a bit about that investment?
Yes, I think first of all, we only invest in the best. So we of course screen the investment that we would like to do in this area of the alternative investment, and we are right now targeting quite a portion of our traditional portfolio, which we manage towards impact investing, because we believe in it. We believe that this company will succeed and that will generate a higher return. So when we got the opportunity to invest in Norrsken, we took it. And we will take other opportunities that we get into this area as well.
Great. So it seems like there's still so much more that can be done. Johan, what do you see as being the most important in accelerating this shift?
Yes, I think that there is a lot of regulation coming, and I think the regulation will regulate the companies, the pension companies, and that is good. But I think that it's much more need of educating the consumers and making it more transparent and making it easy to understand. Because if everyone makes the choice to become more sustainable when it comes to the pension capital, for instance, that will drive the transformation. So I think it's up to everyone to make an active choice.
Thank you so much, Johan and Tuve. I will now hand it over to PwC for their insights on the topic.
Yes, we certainly do. And there are a lot of things that are happening right now regarding regulations and requirements for sustainability reporting. And many of these requirements are implemented just because we need more transparency and comparability and understanding of companies' sustainability performance. And the requirements regarding sustainability reporting, they are constantly updated. And what is voluntarily to report on today might be mandatory tomorrow. So if a company have not yet started working with these coming regulations or with integrating sustainability into their business model, it's really time to do so. And naturally because of compliance reasons, but also because it is important for you as a company to understand what risks and opportunities sustainability and climate change leads to, and how you can address them in order to be a company with a long-term sustainable business model, and therefore long-term stakeholder relations. For a company today, working with sustainability is no longer something that is just nice to do. It's something that you need to do, and something that is expected from companies to consider and work with from their stakeholders, and it should be in the core of the business. A company may have a business model that is working today, but it may not work in a few years depending on changes in the world we are living in. It could be the environment or the society that rapidly tries to adapt. So if a company do not address the fact that things are changing and reflecting if and how it will affect their business model, it could lead to costs, failure, loss of investors and customers, and in the long run, it could lead to them going bankrupt because of an unupdated business model. Not addressing sustainability can come with great costs. First for the companies, but then also in the long run for the private individuals who have invested their money in the companies. So it's very interesting to think about when it comes to pension savings, as that is investing in the future. So for an investor, both as a private individual and for a larger investor, it's really important to understand what type of sustainability information the companies are reporting on and how to reflect on the future. But also to make demands on what type of information you want to receive in order to be able to make informed decisions that are right for you. So with that said, we all have a really important role to play in the capital shift towards a more sustainable future. And it can be worth reflecting on what types of risks and opportunities the companies you are investing your money in, especially your pension money, are facing, because they are investing in your future. Thank you.
Thank you everyone for tuning in. So we've heard from the experts and now it's time to act. Let's make sure we actually all have a future to retire to.
Don't only think short term, think long term as well. It's good for your wallet, it's good for the world, so be wise and spread the word. This was our 45 minutes to change the world and your opinion. Thank you so much for joining.